Today we're exploring something bubbly, frothy, and somewhat perplexing if you've never encountered it before. What precisely is root beer? And why is it labeled as beer when it typically contains no alcohol whatsoever? If you're picturing a foamy pint at a tavern, you're partially correct, yet also partially mistaken. Root beer is an intriguing creation that combines American tradition, herbal remedies, and clever branding into one sweet, aromatic, and carbonated beverage. So, prepare yourself because we're going to investigate what defines root beer, well, root beer, right here on Stories Behind Everything. Fundamentally, root beer is a soft drink traditionally crafted using a combination of roots, barks, herbs, and spices. The flavor is distinctive. Imagine sweet and earthy with undertones of vanilla, wintergreen, and licorice. Depending on the brand or formulation, you might also detect hints of cinnamon, nutmeg, anise, or clove. And if you've experienced a float made with root beer and ice cream, you understand that creamy, foamy enchantment. However, here's the surprising part. Contemporary commercial root beer isn't genuinely produced from actual roots anymore. Today's mass-manufactured versions typically depend on artificial flavorings and sweeteners to replicate the traditional combination. Nevertheless, the essence persists: a dark, sweet, and moderately spicy soda that tastes unlike anything else in the beverage section. So, where did this peculiar drink originate? Root beer actually possesses medicinal origins, quite literally. Before it evolved into a soda, it was a type of herbal remedy brewed domestically. Early Native American communities utilized various roots and herbs like sassafras and sarsaparilla for their purported healing properties. Subsequently, European colonists adopted these traditions and began creating their own brews, which frequently served as tonics or teas. During the 18th and 19th centuries, these brews developed into low-alcohol beverages termed small beers, a general designation for homemade drinks produced from herbs, barks, or even bread and molasses. These weren't concocted for celebrations. They were safe, low-alcohol alternatives to consuming untreated water, which could be hazardous. Among these brews, one made with sassafras root distinguished itself. That would eventually become root beer. Here's the aspect that confuses people. Why beer? Despite the designation, most root beer you'll encounter today contains zero alcohol. But that wasn't historically accurate. Originally, root beer was fermented and contained small quantities of alcohol, similar to ginger beer or birch beer. It acquired the beer label because of its brewing methodology and effervescent nature, even if it wasn't particularly intoxicating. When commercial bottling commenced in the late 19th century, fermentation was largely eliminated from the process to make it safer and more stable. But the name persisted. It helped that the term beer added a sense of maturity or sophistication to the product, even though it was sweet and child-appropriate. And during Prohibition in the United States, the word beer lost some of its alcoholic connotation. Root beer wasn't merely tolerated, it was celebrated. Root beer, as we recognize it, owes considerable credit to a man named Charles Hires. During the 1870s, Hires was a Philadelphia pharmacist who believed in the therapeutic power of herbs and roots. He developed a powdered mixture that, when boiled with water and sugar, produced a flavorful root tea. When he began bottling it for broader distribution, he marketed it as Hires Root Beer despite it being completely alcohol-free. Why? He believed the term beer would attract working-class men, many of whom were beer consumers. And he was correct. His root beer became enormously successful, particularly among those seeking alternatives to alcohol. By the early 20th century, root beer was a standard offering at soda fountains throughout the United States. And soon, companies like A&W, Barks, and Mug emerged onto the scene. Each brand introduced its own variation. Some were creamier, others spicier. But the fundamental formula remained consistent: sweet, foamy, and subtly herbal. One of the most characteristic flavors in early root beer originated from sassafras, a tree native to North America. Its root bark provided the drink a distinctive aroma and taste, one that many individuals still associate with classic root beer. However, sassafras contains a compound called safrole, which was later determined to be carcinogenic in laboratory animals. During the 1960s, the US FDA prohibited safrole in food and beverages, leading manufacturers to reformulate their recipes using artificial flavorings or safrole-free extracts. While some enthusiasts contend that modern root beer lost some of its character following this transition, others appreciate that today's versions are safer and more consistent. Still, if you ever discover craft root beer, there's a strong possibility the brewers are attempting to replicate that traditional flavor as closely as possible, minus the safrole. Interestingly, root beer is a distinctly North American phenomenon. In numerous countries, especially across Europe and Asia, the flavor is genuinely perplexing. Some describe it as resembling toothpaste or cough medicine. That's largely attributable to the wintergreen or menthol-like characteristics in certain recipes, which conflict with international palates unfamiliar with it as a sweet beverage. Nevertheless, root beer has gained dedicated followings abroad, frequently among American expatriates or adventurous food enthusiasts. And with the emergence of craft soda companies, interest is expanding, albeit gradually. So, is root beer actually beer? To state it plainly, not anymore. What commenced as a lightly fermented tonic ultimately transformed into a completely non-alcoholic soda. The name beer remains purely historical and stylistic. It's a reference to its origins, not its ingredients. There are alcoholic versions available. Some modern craft brewers have released hard root beers with alcohol content comparable to regular beer. But those are specialty products and not what you'd locate in your typical supermarket. So, there you have it. The strange, sweet, and storied journey of root beer. It's not quite tea, not quite soda, and definitely not beer in the contemporary sense, but it possesses centuries of herbal tradition behind it. A name that endured thanks to marketing, and a flavor that still generates curiosity today. Whether you adore it or can't quite comprehend its taste, root beer is one of those things that captures a unique aspect of American culture. It reminds us that even the simplest things, a fizzy drink, a label, a flavor, can have surprisingly deep roots. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you proper recognition for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this exploration through stories behind everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories discovered through the smallest details.